On October the 2nd, 2020, American illustrator and comic book artist Richard Corben passed away following heart surgery. Primarily known for his work showcased in Heavy Metal magazine, Richard was one of the last living underground comic book artists of the 70s. His work spanned comic books, movie posters, his own independent films, record covers, video game production art, and even films. One of the last projects he was involved in being a Kickstarter to make a short film based on his comic book story, To Meet the Faces You Meet, with voiceover work by Patton Oswalt and Patrick Warburton. Corben is best known for comic book work on heavy metal, eerie, and creepy, before branching into self-publishing where some say he invented the term graphic novel. He entered the field of mainstream comic books with titles like Banner, Cage, and even several Hellboy titles. He kept regularly producing comic book art, with his final work being Murky World, and a Kickstarter collecting his miniseries Mutant World and its remastered sequel, Son of Mutant World. But he will most likely be best remembered for creating Den, the muscular hero from Earth, whom he chronicled in several stories, and which was adapted into a segment of 1977's Heavy Metal movie, where Den was voiced by John Candy. As if 2020 didn't suck badly enough. Hi everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, Brian Hines. Richard Corben was a juggernaut of the comic book world. Well, of course I was aware of Den from the Heavy Metal movie. I first came across several of his comics on a clearance table at an old Walden Books. I bought them and never looked back. The unapologetic hallmarks of a Corben comic are super muscular men, buxom women, and horrifying monsters. His art and style kept evolving and changing as well. He could do simple pencil and ink art, or more airbrushed or even computer-stylized art. He would even make sculpts of his characters' faces so he'd have a visual reference to draw from. In recent years, most of his comics were published by Dark Horse, where he spent a lot of time in the Cthulhu mythos with books like Rat God and Shadows of the Grave. Now, unfortunately, lately, Disney is the great white shark that's been selling properties left to right. And with their purchase of Fox Films, the Alien and Predator comic books are both leaving Dark Horse Comics for Marvel. Now, since I've decided to review one of Richard's comics today, why not use this as an opportunity to review a classic Dark Horse Alien miniseries? This is Aliens Alchemy. In front of what seems to be a crashed spaceship, a man in purple robes sits at a fire. This is a pilgrimage he's been sent on. However, he hears a heavy footstep and sees a translucent figure, seemingly a man in battle armor. The pilgrim flees in terror. Later, he's seen preaching to a crowd about how the pollution is ruining their planet. Inside an office, a woman is watching the robed man. She's angry and blames another robed man, Legate Muir, for not conducting a fair hearing. Her name is Hatrice Cartha, and she decides the negotiations are over. She's in charge of most of the industry here, and reminds the mayor that when she started converting to steam power, Muir foresaw disaster. But there was only ever one house fire. Not exactly the divine damnation he promised. She leaves, swearing to Muir that if a salvage referendum passes, she'll want his map. Sooner rather than later. Outdoors, the robed man continues going on about how the planetary pollution will lead to the Dark One's arrival. A disheveled old man claims to have seen the Dark One and that the end times are coming. The robed man, Toch, is met by a police officer, Rachel. Actually, his sister. She wants to know why he returned to the Legates when he was having doubts. Well, those doubts are gone. The First Father is right, and Toch is now dedicated to fighting the industry that's poisoning their world. And now, the Dirty Hippie Sketch. Hey man, you're poisoning the planet. Where are we supposed to go if you kill our planet, man? To another planet? We can travel to them now. Oh, cool. Dirty hippie. It's the Dirty Hippie Sketch. Rachel thinks that Emerson, their home, must find a happy medium between Toch's all-or-nothing approach to industry. But before they can continue, Muir arrives and he and Toch head to their order space of operations. In a dark corridor filled with rotting corpses, Muir chants in tongues while Toch and two others wait. Toch is nervous, but Muir knows after what he saw earlier, he's the right man for this job. Later, two of the legates are on their way to begin cooking for the day when they find a dead legate, his face destroyed by small bite marks. They're called hickeys, and they're nothing to be ashamed of. Oh, for shame, this was white when I got it out of the linen closet. After she ripped out my jugular. It must be law. At the local police station, Rachel is arresting the doomsayer from earlier when a female legate enters terrified and shouting about the dead body. Her commanding officer tells Rachel to go investigate. She reminds him that she has no experience investigating murder, but he reminds her nobody here does. Rachel thinks the body was mauled by some animal, but the legates heard no screaming and the dead man's cohort is missing. She wants to talk to Legate Muir, but he's in communion with the first father and cannot be disturbed. A junior officer finds Rachel. They've found the missing man, stuck to the corner of a roof, encased in a hard-shell coating, and baking to be killed. A local drunk, Carl, is ejected from a bar. As mucus drops onto his shoulder, scaring away his steed, Carl sees his own reflection in the black shell of a xenomorph. Carl stumbles back into the bar, a bloody mess, before collapsing. As the bartender goes to shut the door, he's impaled on an alien tail. It tries to drag him out even as the waitress grabs onto his hands, but they become slippery from the blood and the poor man is jerked outside. Moments later, she's confronted by the alien until Carl slams the door shut on it. The waitress has an understandable breakdown as the alien breaks through the window and kills her. An hour has gone by and finally Muir agrees to see Rachel. He's been in communion with First Father, who proclaims the dark night of extinction is upon them. That night, a wounded man is screaming for help but being ignored by the terrified citizens. He's missing an arm and bleeding out as an alien watches from the roofs of the city. The next morning, Legate Muir is preaching to a packed house, but he denounces their sudden adherence to the faith as a result of their fear. Fear of the dark night of extinction. But that's cool, because any faith is good enough for First Father. Oh, hi kids. God here. Sorry about 2020. I know I've been a bit of a hard ass for the last few millennia, but now I'm loosening things up. Got a new look. Lost the beard. Lost the white hair. Took this off that Brian Hines kid, so I know no one has seen it. From now on, all that praying in those drafty churches, gone. Just use the new iPray app on your smartphone and it will do the worshiping for you. Why am I doing it this way? Well, since he arrived, Bill Gates has been a real blessing to my infrastructure. Oh, I know. He wasn't the nicest or kindest man, but once you earn $1 billion, you automatically get into the kingdom of heaven. Oh, don't act so shocked. We see a stained-glass portrait of First Father, a black man in a red jumpsuit surrounded by children. Elsewhere, Rachel and her captain, Price, have discovered the rotting corpse of a rancher, the 12th death in 7 days. A security team of 7 heads to the dead man's ranch only to find everyone dead. Most of the cattle, called kine, are missing, but the few that they find have been just as badly slaughtered as the humans. Distracted by the gore, the officers are easy prey for a xenomorph that attacks. The remaining officers fire crossbolts into the alien, but they're melted away due to its acid blood. The alien makes short work of the officers and their beasts, save Rachel, who falls off and gets knocked out. She awakens to find it feeding on her colleagues. A bloodied Captain Price makes a last-ditch effort to stab the creature in its head. This leads to an acid spray that kills Price, but the xenomorph does retreat. Later, she's explaining what happened to Muir, the mayor, and Hatrice Cartha, who asks if it could have been a wolf. Muir says that's not possible given the state of the bodies they recovered, but Miss Cartha won't budge. This is not the end times. Maybe it's some sort of genetic mutation. I'm a genetic mutation? Fun fact! Well, not fun. What's the other word? Horrifying? Well, anyway, I got 3 of a certain body part instead of the standard number you and your kind have. Try and guess which body part I'm talking about. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Yes, it's brain cells. Damn it. Weir jumps on that idea. If this is a genetic mutation, it's because nature is fighting back against all the pollution her industrial plant pumps into the air, water, and soil. Cartha wonders, why is Muir so happy about all this? Hey, he's just faithful. The faithful have nothing to fear. Hatrice wants to send out a salvage party. Maybe they can find a weapon powerful enough to kill this thing. Muir, however, mentions that the salvage referendum she talked about is the first issue. If it gets voted in tomorrow, they'll have their answers. They continue to argue, and Muir fakes indignity when Hatrice suggests he's manipulating the people on how they vote. He leaves, but Amanda asks after her brother Toch. All Muir will say is he's safe, preparing for doomsday among the faithful. Later, Rachel and Hatrice take a walk. She points out that Rachel is now ranking law officer in Emerson, and she is obviously not one of the faithful. Rachel's on the fence. They both make good points. Hatrice makes a last push. She lives in the city too. The mines and smelting have improved lives, and she cares about the future she's leaving her children. That's why this thing must die. At this point, the salvage referendum, a plan to search and loot the ship called the Ark, will be defeated. Cartha's grandfather said there were amazing things on that ship, likely the weapons they'll need to kill that thing, but only Muir has a map to it. Rachel agrees to get that map. It's likely in the chamber of the First Father. Eventually, she sneaks into that chamber and finds Toch's dead body, something having erupted from his chest. She also finds someone else.
Eyes missing, legs gone, right arm stripped, but it's obviously the first father. He's a replicant. In a flashback, we see the replicant father aboard the USS Emerson. Having drifted through space for the last 17 months, the ship is about to land on a habitable planet. The ship went off course after a drastic change to its weight when a virus somehow killed all adults aboard, leaving only the replicant and a host of children that he must now be father to.
It's the Ridley Scott show about androids, because Ridley Scott loves androids. The show with a plot that sounds like it came from an off-brand Aliens comic book. A bunch of children colonize the world. Their only guardian? An android. Did we mention Ridley Scott loves androids? Because he does. Tally. HBO's Raised by Ducks.
He explains to a blonde moppet named Rose that with no access to computers, books will now be an important way of teaching information. Flash forward, and Rose is now an old woman. Her children's books have been taken as a sort of gospel. The knowledge it represents is all that stands between them and the dark night of extinction. Father arrives. He's again making a point of salvaging technology from the ship. He's seen live animals around the wreck, so the virus that killed their parents is no longer viable. Rose is resolute. The ship is a death zone. Father persists. The last person to die from the plague was over 12 years ago. He cannot go against their wishes, but the USS Emerson is safe. Rose won't have it. For 50 years, they've all grown and aged except him. He's unnatural, but still a voice of authority in this colony. So, she needs to remove him quietly. And one of her muscular followers stabs Father. Rachel is shocked at the truth of Emerson's origins. Father explains that he's over 100 years old now and beginning to break down. He explains that the legates then passed down the secret truths of their origin to a new bully that was groomed to keep the legates' power over the people intact. They've kept Father alive because of what he knows about the aliens. A group of legates are traveling to Emerson with one of their order who's been exposed to a facehugger. A crossbolt impales the poor man, killing him. It's Rachel who watches the other legates run off. Weir and the rest of his order hide aboard the shipwrecked Emerson, but the alien might already be there. As Rachel burns the infected man's body, we see more of her conversation with Father. Certain elements in Emerson's soil, when burned like the incense in this chamber, will mask a human scent from the aliens. Father explains without an active queen, an alien will return to its nest, the ship. That's where Muir has gone to create another alien. Father will tell Rachel how to access the weapons and where the eggs are stored on the ship. She arrives, and using an override code provided by Father, slips past the legates and finds the chamber with 9 remaining eggs. She plants a detonator.
Okay, now it's time to get rid of these last few eggs. So you're going to take them, crack them, put them in the pan, leave the shells in there. I don't want you taking the shells out, and just keep stirring it like it's a risotto. Now, if you don't have actual alien eggs, be sure to use a ton of vinegar. I'm talking like a half a cup per egg. It won't give you the same burn as alien blood, but it will destroy your esophagus pretty bad and lower your quality of life. Keep stirring!
As Muir burns the incense, they hear a muffled explosion, and one of his followers loses his nerve and runs. The alien catches him and makes short work of the faithless coward. Rachel appears, and she throws a charred alien egg onto the incense. She knows everything, although Muir denies it. Suddenly, the man in the bright armor appears again. Muir says it's a ghost, a troubled spirit brought by the pollution and suffering of their world, and Rachel must fall in line lest she suffers his, and the alien runs through the holographic man and attacks Muir. It slaughters the legate ship, mimicking the deaths of Rachel's security team, as she once again is unable to bear arms against the creature when a corpse lands on top of her. As it finally closes in on Rachel, she wrenches the rifle free and blows the creature to smithereens, melting a massive hole in the floor. Father's words echo in her head. The man in armor is a holographic security system. It will make you think that there's something there when it's not, perfectly summing up the legate's manipulation of Emerson. A planet now free of them and the aliens as Rachel walks back to town.
It's a story as old as time. Humans arrive, colonize, aliens start killing humans. Humans finally wipe out aliens after massive loss of life and limp away wiser, but not happier. But is this story any good? Overall, Dark Horse has done nearly 75 alien stories, and yet most of them follow the same pattern. Was this one any better or worse than the rest? Let's take a closer look at Aliens Alchemy.
Like I said, most alien stories fall into the formula of aliens or alien eggs showing up, people die, aliens get destroyed, life returns to normal. This one gets a little heavy and adds some messages on top. The idea of industry versus nature is teased, but in actuality, the people behind industry are shown to be compassionate about the colony. Then the idea of religion being bad and manipulative is introduced, and sure enough, that one turns out to be true. The fact that the legate is so completely smug and unflappable amidst all this death is a pretty big tip-off that he's not a nice guy. He's either running a scam or genuinely believes his religion. It turned out to be the former, but honestly, the whole religion is bad thing was handled a little heavy-handedly. Like, I would have liked a third party to be behind the aliens, but no. The alien itself is pretty much just a murder weapon pointed at the innocent and shot off. Although the reason for aliens being on the ship is kind of a mystery. Why were there alien eggs on the ship at all? Why did all the humans die? Was it a virus? We're never given any satisfactory answers to these mysteries. Sometimes a story can skip answers and just exist in the now. Hellboy does this all the time, but not here. On the whole, we're used to alien stories giving us a reason for the xenomorph's appearance. As for the characters, Tak is the story's Janet Leigh. Despite showing up first and seeming important, he meets an ignoble end and is just there to move the plot along. Rachel takes over as the main character, but really her motivation is shaky. Does she want revenge? Justice? Protection? Maybe all three. Legate Muir just comes off as a super confident douchebag type, although he's not very smart. Why hide in the ship if you know that's the one place the alien is going to return? Wouldn't it be better to stay in town or go hide in the wilderness so the town is between you and the ship? That way the alien isn't likely to come across you. And why did he need to create a second alien? Did he know about their lifespan? Was it going to die soon? The second alien just seems like a waste of a limited resource. And how did those eggs stay fresh for over 100 years? Obviously, a lot of the story was all about atmosphere, but there were some logic holes big enough to drive a power loader mech through. As for the art, well, it's pretty damn good, like most of Corben's art. But that said, the alien universe is not playing to Corben's strengths, i.e. muscular men, curvaceous women. He excels on the landscapes and the violent battles, though. He also gets to have his usual expressive faces on the cast. He seems to be having trouble with the xenomorph itself, never quite getting the look of Giger's design to mesh with his art. Corben is at his best when he's on his own, not adapting someone else's art to his style. I think the story would have been much better served, artistically speaking, if it wasn't an alien story. If they'd told the same story but let Corben do the design work and leave the licensing out of it. But then a story featuring the cinematic xenomorphs is probably going to sell a lot better than a comic book about an alien monster without any brand recognition. In the end, good, not great art from a great, not good artist. Arcudi's script is functional but a little heavy-handed with its messages. It also creates some pretty obvious plot holes.
Well, I definitely can't say that this is the best Alien series I've ever read, but I also can't say that it's the worst. Likewise, this isn't the best or worst artwork of Richard Corben's career. I give Aliens Alchemy 3 out of 5 stars. There are better places to begin your journey through Richard Corben's enormous and highly satisfying career. Den, Banner, his numerous Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft adaptations. Alchemy is enjoyable, but not memorable. Well, hoping those smelly green eggs I ate this morning were just rotten and not pods containing an invasive parasite. Well, aside from salmonella, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, Brian Hines.